but I'd love if you guys did it. So let me know. So I'm going to talk about the top 5 cryptos to look out for. Now, guess which one I'm not covering? Bitcoin, yeah, because Saket spoke about Bitcoin. Bitcoin is like the most popular one out there. So I'm really just going to cover the pretty much the top, it's like 5 major ones, and then the last one is pretty much going to be mine. So I'll talk about that. All right. So I'm going to start with Litecoin. So Litecoin was started like in 2017. Since the start of 2017, it grew something like 7,291%. Some of you guys might be aware that Bitcoin grew like in 2017, it grew by 1,700%, but Litecoin actually grew by like 7 times that. So basically 7,000%. And the reason is mainly because of transaction times. So the average Bitcoin transaction takes about 10 minutes, but the average transaction for Litecoin takes about like 2.5 minutes. So to the extent that Bitcoin is generally considered like digital gold, a lot of people consider Litecoin sort of digital silver. And the main reason is that Litecoin is really, really fast. Now, the total number of Litecoins will max out at 84 million. So that's something like 4 times what Bitcoin. Bitcoin maxes out at 21 million Bitcoins, and Litecoin maxes out at 84. So far, we're only at 18 billion. So Litecoin is really tiny. $80 billion is not that much as far as the cryptocurrency cap is concerned, but it's literally it's one of the top secondary coins after Bitcoin. So it's important to cover it. But the fact is, like, if you were to ask me what do I think about the future of Litecoin, I think that it's really not going to last very much longer. Because the main reason why it's grown is because of transaction times and the fact that Bitcoin transaction times are really long. I mean, if you think about 10 minutes for a Bitcoin transaction, there was a KFC that was accepting Bitcoin for like a bucket of chicken. So now I don't know how many of you guys want to wait an extra 10 minutes just to pay them. So there's obviously some serious issues both with Bitcoin as a transactional currency, which Litecoin tries to fix. But the fact is that these issues, the technological issues that Bitcoin is facing, especially in terms of transaction times, that's going to go away. And when that does, there's not going to be much hope for Litecoin. All right. Next, let's see what. Okay, so Ethereum. This is something most of you guys have already heard about. Ethereum, is like the second most popular cryptocurrency. It's valued at something like $80 billion. Ethereum, in total, the market cap for Ethereum is $80 billion. So the idea of Bitcoin is like to replace PayPal and online banking, but the goal of Ethereum is essentially to replace like third parties. So whenever you transact on the internet or pretty much have anything to do, like let's say you use a service like Amazon, you use a service like Google or Facebook, there's somebody who's the keeper of that data. There's a middleman that you're basically relying on to transfer your data, and you're trusting them with your data, and you're relying them to basically work within certain confines. So the problem with that is it's really centralized, right? So it's really easy for hackers to get to. The same thing with the bank, etc., etc. The main thing about Ethereum that differentiates itself from Bitcoin is Ethereum allows you to build distributed apps, known as VApps, and also smart contracts. So what is a smart contract? Did we go over this earlier? So smart contracts are basically like self-executing contracts. So it's one thing to have a system where you have to do a certain group of actions and it goes to a third party, and then the third party does some actions, and then it goes back to the first. That's how a typical transaction happens. So let's say you send a message, it goes first to Facebook servers, and then from Facebook it goes to whoever you message. That's the standard. You have a person in between. With Ethereum, the whole concept of building applications on the blockchain, particularly with Ethereum, is what you really need is these self-executing contracts. So basically, the system itself will behave a certain way based off of pre-existing rules. So you don't really have to manipulate it at all. It just sort of happens on its own, and so it's sort of like an automated version of a lot of what you're used to. The idea is to decentralize decentralize the internet. So the person who invented the Apache web server, one of his famous quotes is that centralization is the original sin of the internet. Because everything, like, even though the idea of the internet was supposed to be like a distributed network where you have people from all over, you still have these central bodies like Facebook, Google, Twitter, etc., sort of controlling the whole thing. So that's basically what Ethereum is in short trying to fix. It's basically trying to get back to a decentralized network and have like these distributed apps that are self-executing. So the next one I wanted to cover is Ripple. So Ripple is like, a lot of people don't really know about it, but it's actually worth $100 billion. That's more than any of the other cryptocurrencies that we discussed. The interesting thing about Ripple as opposed to all these other things is there's really no way to mine Ripple. It's not something you mine. It's basically something that's determined by like the company in San Francisco. So they're the ones who determine the total amount of Ripple in the system. They recently introduced 100 billion Ripple coins, and they just released another 33, which is currently moving around in the system. And the main purpose of this of Ripple, so basically what Saket was trying to point out is that blockchain and cryptocurrency are often used interchangeably, but they're two very different things. Blockchain is just the technology that cryptocurrency is built on. So you have various different usages for cryptocurrency, a lot of different use cases. I just went over Ethereum and like why that would be useful, and Litecoin and why that would be useful. The thing about Ripple is it's more like a business-to-business thing, and in particular, more like a bank-to-bank system. So the idea is like when you transfer money, let's say from India to like the US or something, it takes a really long time to get there, and it goes through several checks and balances, and and not only that, but it costs a lot of money, right? So it's particularly when you have transactions that are like on the Google Play Store, or like the Apple Store, you're talking about like $1 transactions, and the amount of fees that ends up costing, because you have like these low, like high volume, low dollar amount transactions, right? So that can actually start adding up for a bank. So what the concept of Ripple is basically to like sort of sit in between, and so when a bank wants to transfer a certain amount of money to another bank, it converts it into Ripple. The Ripple is the thing that's transferred, and then the bank on the other side basically translates it back to fiat currency. So sort of Ripple is more like a transitory currency that's used between banks. And the interesting thing about Ripple, and the reason it's worth $100 billion as opposed to the other ones, is it's got a lot of buy-in from some of the major players, some of the major banks. So for example, I know that like Bank of America uses it, UBS uses it. These are all companies that are basically experimenting with Ripple. And it sort of explains why they're so massive. Matter of fact, because Ripple is not mined and Ripple is sort of determined by the person that's sort of by the company itself, and how many Ripples are in, how many Ripple coins. The company itself determines that. So basically, the CEOs and a lot of the other guys over at Ripple have ended up becoming multimillionaires and billionaires and so on. So that's Ripple. So the next one I'm going to talk about is Monero. So Monero, if Ripple is like the big daddy of cryptocurrencies, like Monero is sort of like the scrappy little kid. So Monero is pretty much built almost entirely on donations and people working for free. So it's secure. The main thing about Monero is that differentiates it from the other currencies is that they sort of pride themselves on being extremely secure, private, and untraceable. So the way they do this is they use something known as ring signatures, and essentially there's a group of cryptographic signatures, and there's one real participant. So they all appear valid, but the real one cannot be differentiated. So you can't tell which one is the one that's actually making the transaction, which is why Monero is really interesting. In case any of you guys are wondering, Monero is money in Esperanto, which is like a language that's considered like the world language, really popular. So the last one I want to cover is funnel. Whoa, let me go back. I'll play this video. Yeah, so basically, I don't know if what you could tell from the video because it took a while to start, but the concept of funnel is essentially, it's a notification filtration service. It's a notification filtration platform. So we have statistics saying the average person spends like 2.5 hours a day just looking at notifications. Now that's 5 hours a day looking at their phone, but 2.5 hours specifically looking at notifications. And the vast majority of that usage is in 30-second intervals. So people take out their phone and look at it for 30 seconds and put it back. And we've seen other statistics that say for every 30 seconds of distraction, you can lose 30 minutes of productivity. So you can just imagine every time you get a notification, you pull your phone out and you take a look at it, and you're basically taken out from what you're doing and into like a different world, and then it takes you like a while to get back. So the concept of funnel is to essentially funnel away the notifications that are not necessary and funnel in the notifications that are. So we have different ways to filter them. So it essentially sits on top of your notification system, and it hijacks it. So it prevents, it allows certain notifications through, and it prevents others from showing up at all. So you basically won't even get it. So the idea behind that is you can filter them based off of contact, time, and also text string. So you can say, for example, if my mom messages me during 9 to 5, do not let the message through, and so it will go into like an outbox that you can check later. Similarly, you can say if my boss messages me past 5 p.m., don't let it through. Also, you can say something like, if any message comes through with the text string Arun Jaitley and budget, definitely don't let it through. That would mess up your mood, right? So the idea, the most interesting part of that is that we have this thing called social blocking. So the idea being that if you block a notification, it makes it less likely that your friend is going to receive the same notification. So it's similar to Truecaller in that it basically uses the wisdom of the cloud to figure out what a spam notification is. And essentially, users that train the AI into figuring out what are spam notifications, they are paid in cryptocurrency based off of the notifications that are blocked. That's what the whole concept is. They're paid in Funnel Coin. And on the other end of that, we're collecting so much data, so we have